I beg to move that this House has considered work capability assessment timescales. And I welcome the Minister to his place to discuss this important issue, and I'm very grateful to him and his office for the recent engagement that they have had with mine on this issue. But I'm sure he's gathered from our recent correspondence that the focus of my remarks today will not be about the timescales for first-time applications for work capability assessments, but for those people who have requested a new or reassessment. Now, there are lots of reasons, Mr Western, why someone might need to have a new assessment. No health condition follows a set path, and whilst we might hope that someone's health might stay stable or indeed improve, that is often not the way that it works out. Now, I will admit that I don't know how many applicants there are waiting for brand new work capability assessments, but I do know that when the Minister wrote to me last month, he told me that there were a backlog of 35,000 reassessments waiting to be seen. So that's a lot of people struggling or unable to work and arguably not getting the support that they need. And in response to recent PQs, I was told that the Department has no breakdown on that backlog. And I do find that quite concerning, and I hope the Minister will take that away. Whilst I'm hoping he will tell me in his remarks all the ways they are trying to fix the backlog, I would put it to him that you can't add capacity if you don't know where to target, and therefore that's why you need a breakdown of that backlog. There are different assessment providers across the UK. Maximus serves my constituency of North East Fife, whereas other assessment contracts sit with Capita, Serco and Ingeus. And I'd be grateful for more staffing near to North East Fife, but the DWP seems to have no knowledge of knowing whether the problems are greater in Scotland or indeed in Skegness. And when I talk about delays, I'm not talking to a service standard being missed by a few weeks or even a few months. As the Honourable Member for Strangford has said, I have cases in my team where wait times have been going on for 18 months or more. I'd like to talk a little bit about the impact of these delays on people on the waiting list, and I hope the Minister and Mr Western, you will understand that for the security and wellbeing of my constituents, I'm not going to share individual details. There are common denominators across the cases which can paint the picture, but as most MPs know, the people we support are often vulnerable and have suffered considerably in their lifetimes, and it is important that we safeguard their welfare. But the common denominators are these. Backgrounds of serious abuse, sometimes back to childhood, abuse which is hard to imagine and has had a serious impact on adult mental health and well-being, severe anxiety, depression and PTSD, physical symptoms and pain, sometimes linked to external factors like car accidents, and other times linked to past and ongoing trauma. I have at least one case waiting for a diagnosis of ADHD, but in general, extreme vulnerability across the board. Now, summer 2024 seems like a long time ago. There were 243 happy and optimistic newly elected Labour MPs filling the palace. The Paris Olympics were just kicking off. London was full of Swifties for the Eras tour. And my constituents were taking the difficult decision that their struggles with managing their health was all just too much to manage to hold down a job, and started the process of requesting support from DWP. That is an illustration of how long they've been waiting. And these extended waits are absolutely debilitating. The not knowing is incredibly difficult. And people do worry, and I think we all experience this as MPs. I mean, these people worry to the point of absolute obsessive hyperfixation that their existing benefits will be taken away. And this is added to by the stigma people feel for not being able to support yourself or your children, of relying on the food bank, of not being able to meet your basic needs for energy or clothes, an anxiety of being judged by those around you. And as the Honourable Member for Strangford mentioned his caseworkers, I spoke with my caseworkers in the run-up to this debate, and I really want to take a moment to appreciate our caseworkers, because I think we need to remember they are not trained as benefit advisors, counsellors or welfare specialists, but they are the ones day in, day out picking up the phones, trying to unpick what has gone wrong and providing backup to our constituents who find themselves in crisis and nowhere else to go. And that is true for all MPs' offices. One of my caseworkers told me that on the phone someone can go to being completely fine and talking about their application, their health treatment, and then next to no morning can be in floods of tears and talking about and expressing suicidal thoughts. The DWP isn't responsible for the underlying factors and histories of my constituents, let me make that clear, but the DWP is here to provide a safety net. And right now, by leaving them in limbo, everything is being made much worse. Mental health is worse, trauma responses are triggered, physical health is also worse. One of my constituents has been advised that there is no point pushing on with investigations and treatment for her pain whilst there are so many anxiety-inducing factors ongoing. So recovery is being impacted by this too. And of course, being unable to work without the additional health element of universal credit can make making ends meet incredibly difficult. And poverty and ill health, as we all know, is a terrible cycle. Now, I know the constituents I'm working with are trying their best, and I'm grateful to the local agencies who are offering support. And I'd particularly like to highlight the work of Fife Women's Aid and Square Start. The former offers invaluable trauma support and counselling, whereas the latter can help with all sorts of essential life skills. And I know how many of my constituents have particularly benefited from the budgeting and help with managing their finances. But the reality is we're all stuck in a holding pattern until the assessments are carried out and decisions are made. And we know that my constituents are not alone because they're in that cohort of 35,000 others. Now, the Minister mentioned the steps the Government is taking to reduce the backlog in his letter to me last month. And he'll be unsurprised, I think, to know that I have some questions that I hope he will be able to address today. Firstly, can he explain the basis of why his department has chosen to prioritise new work capability assessments over applicants who have notified the DWP about a change in condition? Now, I'm not saying that existing claimants should be prioritised, but a different first come, first served or some kind of different way of prioritisation might seem fairer. And can he explain how the backlog has got so big? And if it stemmed back to before the 2024 election, why is it taking so long to start to tackle it? And on what grounds is his department used for considering expediting reassessment? My caseworkers coincidentally went to an information session run by Maximus yesterday, and they, with the 50 or so other staffers on the call, were told that the DWP does have the power to approve reassessments being processed if they think there are reasonable grounds for doing so. And I have to say that was news to my team and I, because before now DWP case handlers have consistently said that Maximus is independent and that they have no influence over their operations. However, what we were told yesterday is that Maximus is under instruction from DWP to prioritise all new applications, and that only if they find spare capacity to then look at the backlog of reassessments. If we write to Maximus and make the case for a reassessment being prioritised, they can escalate it to DWP, and that is where the ultimate decision lies. So I'd be very keen to hear more about this from the Minister and confirmation of what we were told yesterday. In terms of making things faster, could the Minister please give more details on what is entailed in rapidly expanding reassessment capacity and accelerating the recruitment of health professionals? I think that goes to the point made by the Honourable Member for Strangford. Given work capability assessments are outsourced to companies like Maximus, what conversations are they having with providers about increasing that capacity? How is that going to be carried out, and how will it be allocated geographically? Now, the DWP already carries out some PIP assessments in-house. Has his department considered adding capacity to work capability assessments with in-house resource? The Minister said in his letter to me that health professionals are being encouraged to make recommendations based on the papers rather than in person where possible. So my ask to him is, what is he doing to make sure those decisions are being made correctly? I'm aware, for example, at least one of my constituents is stuck on a very long waiting list for PTSD and ADHD diagnosis. There are NHS backlogs everywhere, and regrettably Scotland is no exception in that regard. Leads me on to my next question, which is how the Minister intends to ensure, with this rapid expansion, that decisions are being made right overall. We know that rushing at this stage and getting it wrong will just push the backlog into mandatory reconsideration, which helps nobody. More delays for our constituents and more administration costs for his department. And on a final note, although this wasn't why I put forward this debate, I am aware that the Minister in his remarks might be minded to mention the planned long-term reforms for work capability assessments. And I would like to make a plea now for him to think very carefully about what assessments will be used for Scottish applicants and how those systems will be linked in with DWP. As he knows, we have adult disability payment under Social Security Scotland, and there are already so many problems that need fixing in how these two systems talk to each other. So my caseworkers have to be experienced in both of those systems, or don't, as the case might be. And at the moment, without fixing those foundations and ensuring the right conversations take place between the Scottish Government and the DWP would be unhelpful for everyone. To conclude, Mr Weston, 35,000 people waiting sounds like just another number, but it's the size of a medium town in the UK, or just a little bit smaller than the population of Liechtenstein. but there is a significant cost for every person left in limbo, and there is a significant cost to us as a population and to our wider economy. I hope I have demonstrated that today. Thank you.